lot of piano teachers will tell you that adults can't really learn how to play the piano. Apparently we've left it too late and our brains are too slow. But I don't think that's true. It is true that the kids maybe learn a little bit quicker than we do, but not as much as you would think. And it's certainly true that many adult learners struggle with the way that the piano is taught, because traditionally it's very much oriented around the needs of younger learners. But I think that adult learners, and older adult learners in particular, have gigantic advantages that the kids don't have. And if you understand what those advantages are, you can use them in your own practice to make much faster progress on the piano. So what we're going to do today is take you through what I think are the 7 superpowers of adult piano learners. And yes, I know this isn't an actual piano. I was hardly going to bring one outside, was I? Anyway, superpower number 1 is determination. Over the course of your adult life, you've had a lot of experiences and probably taken a few knocks. And something you might have noticed is that sometimes if you just stay the course, if you just doggedly stick to what you're doing, that can deliver results, even when things seem really adverse and really against you. So there are 2 really useful tactics you can apply here. The first one is something I've talked about often before on the channel. It's push past. It's always practicing a skill beyond the point at which you think you've got it. So if you've just learned the scale of D major and you've played it successfully for the first time, don't just pat yourself on the back and stop and move on to the next thing. Keep on practicing it until it almost can't go wrong. The second really useful tactic is to constantly reinforce earlier levels of development. Very often when people are doing my beginner's piano course here on YouTube, they come to me and say, "Hey Bill, I've got to lesson 8, but now I'm stuck. What should I do?" And usually the first thing I do is say, look, revisit lessons 6 and 7 and make sure you've got the skills in those lessons really drilled down, because the chances are what you've done is try to move on with the lesson 8 material before you're really comfortable with the stuff it depends on in the earlier lessons. And that principle can apply across your piano playing lifetime. Superpower number 2. Now, when you were a kid, your experience of learning anything was quite narrow. You hadn't learned very much. But now you're a grown-up, your learning experience is really broad. You've spent a lifetime learning loads of stuff. So a really powerful way that you can make use of that broad experience of learning is to reflect on the type of things that you have enjoyed learning in the past and the type of things that you haven't enjoyed learning in the past. If you can think about the kind of things you tend to avoid and the kind of things you don't tend to avoid, the kind of things you like doing, you can then map that to your piano learning and think, well, you know, here's this thing like scales, for example, a really good example of something that a lot of people tend to avoid. I'm likely to be a bit kind of lazy with my scales. I'm not going to want to practice those, and therefore they might be a weak spot. And then you can identify that potential weak spot and lean into it. Superpower number 3. You can decide the mindset you're going to take to learning the piano. Now, strictly speaking, of course, anyone can do that at any age, but as an adult you have much more experience of saying to yourself, okay, this is a state of mind in which I'm going to approach this task. Why is that a superpower? Well, one of the advantages that piano learning kids have, as well as their apparent speed of learning, is that they're just used to taking knowledge on authority at school, college, whatever. Now, a lot of the time, of course, mindlessly accepting authority is a bad thing, but when you're learning, it can be a big time saver. Many adult learners waste time and mental effort questioning the value of or the reasoning behind one or other aspect of learning the piano, like learning scales. This isn't music, I'm just going up and down. Or learning how to play in a variety of keys. Surely I can just learn everything in C and use the transpose function on my digital piano. Or using good finger choices. Isn't it just easier to jump? It's just way more efficient to say to yourself, okay, the lady who is teaching me piano has been playing for decades, so if she says using the right fingers is a good idea, I should maybe just take that on trust. Like I said, it just saves a lot of time and mental energy that you could be using on your learning. One of the worst things you have to deal with as an adult piano learner is what I call the self-doubt mixtape. It's an endless reel of questions that goes round and round and round in your head saying, have I really got the time for this? Have I got the talent for it? Will it be worth all the effort in the end? Is there something else I could be doing instead? And the problem with the self-doubt mixtape is that it can really slow down your progress as a piano player. It can distract you from your practice, it can demoralise you and cause all sorts of difficulties. It's even worse, by the way, if you're teaching yourself how to play the piano, because then you don't have a teacher by your side who can give you the kind of advice and guidance and support that you need to push through that wall of self-doubt. Now, one solution to the problem that you might like is to join my online community of piano learners over at patreon.com/Bill Hilton. We're a really friendly, supportive bunch of people, and there are lots of older learners there already, actually. I think the average age of the group is now over 50. And if you do sign up, you get lots of other benefits. You get access to all the exclusive content that I create for my Patreon community. You get complimentary access to my piano packs, which are really, really popular. And you also get priority support with your piano learning from me personally. So if you ever run into a problem with a piece or a scale or an improvisation or whatever, you just ping me a message through the Patreon system and I'll help you out. And it will actually be me. I don't farm this stuff out to other people. So if that sounds interesting, then open another browser tab right now and head over to www.patreon.com/Bill Hilton. And once you've finished watching this video, take a look at what's on offer over there. And if you like it and you decide to sign up, I'll be really pleased to see you. Superpower number 4 is that as an adult, you've got a lot of experience at planning things. You've planned stuff in your home life, you've planned stuff in your work life, you've planned, maybe your own education, your kids' education, whatever. You've planned loads of stuff. Now, as a piano learner, having an understanding of how plans are made and how they tend to play out is very, very valuable. Just recently, I found myself talking to a lot of older learners about the value of what I call direction of travel in your piano learning. It's more important to have a direction of travel than to be on precisely the right direction of travel. Okay, so it's better to have a plan than to have exactly the right plan. The problem this comes out of is basically the fact that there are so many piano learning resources out there now. I've got my courses, I've got my books, other people have got their courses and books. You can go to a teacher, you can buy a teach yourself course, you can do lots and lots of different things. And what it's really easy to do is to settle on a plan, settle on a direction of travel. And then when it gets challenging, as it will, say to yourself, maybe this other plan, this other direction of travel looks better. Maybe that would suit me better, and you switch. And what you end up doing is switching from one to another, to another, to another, and you go round and round in circles and you don't make any progress. So having a direction of travel, even if it turns out to be not exactly the one that suits you, is better than, aimlessly meandering around between different plans and ideas. As an adult, you have the experience of planning and of following through plans, and you can say, right, this is going to be my direction on the piano for the next 6 months or the next year. And at the end of 6 months or a year, I'm going to see where I am. Go. And then we come back to superpower number 1, determination. We stick to that plan, we follow it through. Superpower 5 is that you might start to find scales and exercises weirdly rewarding. I certainly find this myself as I get older, and I hear from a lot of adult learners who tell me that they, with scales in particular, they really get into them and find them absorbing in a way that they probably never would have done when they were younger. Now, if that's the case for you, it really is a superpower, because scales are the magic fairy dust that make your piano playing better and easier. Yeah, they increase your relaxation and your mobility on the piano keyboard. They even up the control you have across your fingers, which is really important actually, because naturally all of us tend to have more control over fingers 1, 2 and 3 of each hand than we do of 4 and 5. Yeah, so that's kind of critical. What else? They reinforce your non-dominant hand, and they also give you an instinctive feel for the shapes of different keys, major and minor, across the piano keyboard. So if you don't practice your scales, start giving it a go and see if you don't get kind of absorbed in them. Superpower number 6. This is where I get to sound like your doctor. You have the power, to some extent at least, to look after your general health and to eat well, sleep well, and get some exercise. Now, why is that a superpower? Well, there's plenty of evidence that doing all of those things, it really helps you to learn anything. Now, if for any reason you struggle with your sleep or you can't get great exercise because of illness or disability, don't say to yourself, oh no, I'll never be any good, I better give up, because you can still make loads of progress without those factors. When our kids were tiny, with each of them, I went for more than a year without consistently good sleep, and my diet went to pot and I didn't take great exercise, and yet still I made progress with my piano playing and with lots of other things. So it's definitely not a deal breaker, it's just that for most of us, diet, sleep and exercise are to some extent within our control. And if you look after all three, it will help your progress as a piano player. Finally, Superpower 7 is that you're probably pretty good at using metacognition. Metacognition is the term psychologists use to describe the process of thinking about how you're thinking. Now, there are several ways you can use metacognition. For example, it can help you to deal with that all too familiar situation that all of us piano players face where we're getting frustrated because we know at a mental level what our hands and fingers should be doing to play a particular piece, but they just won't do it. Now, in that situation, especially in the early days, it's really easy to get demoralised or to think there's something wrong with you. The simple truth is that it takes much less time to store something in your declarative memory, your memory for words and facts and processes and things like where your fingers ought to be on the piano keyboard, than it does to store things in your procedural memory, the thing that's sometimes known as muscle memory, even though it isn't in your muscles, and which controls learned physical movements like actually playing the piano. It's the lag in learning between declarative memory and procedural memory that causes that frustration. Now you know that, the next time you experience it, you can say, hold on, I understand why I'm feeling frustrated, and I know that if I keep going, I'll get it eventually. And that should stave off the spiral of demoralisation. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to check out my Patreon community over at patreon.com/BillHilton. And if right now you want to do something practical with your newfound superpowers, check out this video, which I think you'll really enjoy. I'll see you over there.